Okay, guys, welcome back to part three. Part two, as just mentioned, we went over building a GitHub account and initializing our repository with this command and putting that into our terminal and updating our README file. So if you've done those three things, again, create a GitHub account, update your repository command line, and update your repository README, you're up to date. So let's do the next steps, which is we have the latest version of code on our machines, and we want to push that up to GitHub. So how I do that? There's one tertiary space in between GitHub's version control. Oops, let me get this arrow off this real quick. There's a space in between GitHub and my laptop. So in this space right here, this square that I just added, this is called the staging area. And how it actually works is we need to push our code. So whatever code changes we have, right? So we just built an index.html file. That's all I've done so far. And we need to do a command that pushes this index.html file to the staging area. And then from the staging area, we need to push this to GitHub. So this is kind of how it works in a nutshell. And the reason is we do want kind of an auxiliary step to make sure we're not just directly pushing this straight over here, because there could be potential changes. There could be potential merge conflicts, things like that. And don't worry about that if you don't know what these are. But this route right here is what we do not want to do. We don't want to go straight from our machine to GitHub. We actually want to go straight from our machine to the staging area. And GitHub is actually watching the staging area as well. And it is looking to make sure that all changes that could be coming in aren't going to produce any merge conflicts. So GitHub is actually watching this. And we could push to this. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do the first command, which is going to be a git add command, which is right here. Oh, and then I think we need to install GitHub CLI. So let me go to ChatGPT and show you guys real quick how to install GitHub on my machine. So we do want to do these steps as well. I completely spaced over this real quick, which this is a very important step because you definitely need to install Git onto your machine. So go ahead and run through these steps. Brew install Git. If you don't have Homebrew, make sure to install Homebrew, which is another process. But let me go to my terminal, and I'll paste in. Let me cd to the main directory, and then I'll brew install Git, which could take some time. And make sure that you install for the right machine. So I can install Git for Mac, and I can install Git for Windows. So boom, looks like this is my machine. I'm using a Mac. So if you have a Windows or a Linux, make sure that you install accordingly. And then I want to make sure I do brew install Git. And looks like there's Mac ports as well that I need to do. So while that's installing, right, it's running brew, and I actually do have Git installed on my machine, so it shouldn't take too long. But you can see it's going ahead and installing Git. So that's a very, very, very important step. Looks like you can also set up a GitHub desktop, which is an optional GUI. You don't need to do that, but looks like you can go ahead and do this, which looks like its own process. But that's kind of a bit more about Git, and this is doing some configuration stuff. So it looks like you can change your GitHub name from your local machine. Or again, you could just go to your GitHub and do it all here through your settings and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so don't don't be afraid to dive into your terminal as well. And it looks like you can have more commands beyond just changing your username and email. If I come here, it looks like I can say git config and change all of these things if I would like. But again, I wouldn't really worry about that too much. If you opt to change your username or emails or anything like that, I would just come to your website and go ahead and go to your profile, your settings, all that stuff. Okay, so it looks like Git is installed on my machine. So I'll go ahead and clear out of my terminal. And let's just double check. Do I need to install Git CLI or anything else? Right, guys, if you're struggling on this step, go ahead and just Google. It's going to be a wrestling match depending on your machines. Everyone's machine is going to be a little bit different. So do not be afraid to spend a little bit of time on this step, going through Stack Overflow, Google, YouTube. It's going to be different. You know, it always is. I remember specifically installing this for this machine was a whole different process versus installing it for my work computer. We actually had to do some SSH keys for the repositories I wanted to access. So yeah, it's going to be unique to your machine more than likely. Hopefully not too unique where it's just an edge case, but just run through the process. Make sure you have Git on your machine, and then let's get back to this process. So after we've installed Git, we want to make sure we're doing this process right here, which is we build code. So whether it's an index.html file, whether it's a React project, right? Whether it's a React Native project, whether it's a Vue project, whether it's a Python. Basically, we build code on our machine right over here. This is what we do first, and whatever that looks like. And we want to do a command in GitHub, and specifically git add, and then we can git commit as well. I'll show you guys those commands in a moment. We could also add a message. So I'll say init repo or something, right? Initialize repo. And this message could be, this -m is just a flag for message, and this message could actually be anything we want. And then those two commands, when we git add, it'll push it to the staging area. And when we commit it, it's, I believe, committed to the staging area. And then we can do one more command called git push. And this command would then take this update in the staging area and push it up to GitHub. And finally updating our version on the machine. And if you remember, right, if we're working in a team, so let's say this is, I use Chester as my example. So Chester's laptop. Chester can now do something called a poll, and he can poll. And this also doesn't have to be a teammate. This could actually be another laptop of yours. Let's say your laptop burns in a fire, or you lose it, or you update it. This could just be another laptop, right, of any sort, and you can poll. You can do a git poll command, right? Technically, be git fetch and then a git poll, and you could pull down all this code, whatever it is, onto your laptop. So this is kind of one workflow of version control. So let's go ahead and walk through these steps in the real deal, and let's do this. Okay, so step one, we need to do git add, and we say dot to add all of our changes here. You could also specifically say git add index.html, for instance, if you just want to add the HTML file. But if we do git add dot, it'll add all the changes, both the README and the HTML file. And let's say if we build another file, so I'll say style.css, oops, not CSSA, but CSS, and I'll say .test. We're not going to add anything. It's just showing you can add code here. I'll say button, right? Looks like I'm getting an underline here. So color red. Doesn't really matter, whatever your code is. But again, so if I say git add dot, you can see in our version control over here in source control, Oops. Let me try to move this. Come on. You can see in our version control right here, in our VS Code, our source control, we have changes. So anytime we make an update to these files, our version control right here, our source control, is going to be tracking these changes. So to add all those changes, like I said, we can just specifically pick one out by saying dot or git add index.html. Or if I want to add all of them at once, I can say git add like this with a dot, and that'll add all of them. And then what I want to do, now that you can see it's moved them from the changes to the staged changes. So we've gone from this area, from my laptop, to now these changes are in the staging area of the README and the styles.css file. Those are all in the staging area now. And what I want to do is git commit, and I want to do a dot or dash flag, excuse me. And I could give this commit a name. So with a lot of version control systems, right? Like you probably are going to be using a management system as well, whether it's a Jira or a Trello or Team Syncer, which is my application for version control. And typically, you could see your where can we go for that, or to show this thing? You're going to have a bug, or excuse me, not a bug, but a typically tasks. Guys, forgive me. This is actually the published version right now. I have this bug right now. So let me pull up the private version real quick. Just do this. Boom, boom, boom. But typically, your tasks are going to have some sort of badge on them, some sort of category, some sort of prefix where you can organize your GitHub commits. So let me show you guys. And if you want to sign up for Team Syncer, it's in the description below. It's going to be teamsyncer.com, SYNCR for the syncer part. So let me go to the application real quick. This is just the local machine version, which is more up to date than the published version. And maybe we could talk about that in a moment as well. Let me sign in. And you can skip this step as well, but basically, I just wanted to show you the relevance of adding a message to our GitHub commits. So let's say I'm working on a project, right? Which I am, and I can come to the Kanban page, and you can see that these tasks have a category, or maybe these ones will have a more specific category, like Kanban. Maybe I could say Kanban -1, right, for the first task here. I actually spelled Kanban wrong, but Kanban-1, right? And let's say I'm working on this task. Task card needs to stay, and I'm working with my team, and I've completed this task. I probably want to take this Kanban-1. Let me rename it. Let's get it proper, Kanban-1. And this is going to be what I want to add in my commit message, right? So I want to say Kanban-1. This way I know if I was working on this task, I can always track in my version control exactly what I was working on. Now feel free to skip that step. You don't need to do that, right? But it just helps with organization, where you could say Kanban-1, maybe finished the task card, or whichever task that might have been. But you want to have some nominal way of tracking your tasks. And I would recommend adding that part of your git commit message. But again, that was just an example of how you could do it. This message is not specific to that. You could quite literally name this anything you want. So just because it's our very first git commit, I'll say init repo for initialized repository is what I'll do for my commit message. I just wanted to show you guys on Team Syncer how you could use these tools to help monitor and track your versions. And then now that we've added this git commit -m, let's go back to our Lucid chart. So we've now git committed, and I suppose this is now ready to be pushed. to the GitHub version source code. So it's not actually up in GitHub quite yet. It's almost there. We need to do one last command, which is git push. And what that is going to do is it's going to push all of these changes from our staging area up to GitHub. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh, and we actually, because it's our first push, GitHub has given us this git push setup stream branch, right? The current branch main has no upstream branch. So this is only something we need to do for the very first git push, is make sure we set our origin upstream. So just go ahead and copy that down, paste it in your terminal, and it will do all of that. So, right here is very important as well. We do need to set up permissions. Again, this is kind of all first step stuff. So let's figure this out together. So let's set up permissions. And you can see it kind of shows us how to do everything, right? Unable to access, boom, boom, boom. So let's go to ChatGPT. Let's say, how do I set up permissions for my GitHub to push to, or for my, excuse me. And this is only because we're starting a brand new GitHub account. After we set these permissions up one time, we shouldn't ever have to do it again. So to push to GitHub, let's see the steps we need to do. If I remember correctly, we might have to do some SSH key stuff. Oh, right, here we go. Boom. Set up SSH key. So open the terminal or command prompt, and guys, let's go ahead and do this in a next episode. I think this episode is quite a lot of information. But let's go ahead and do this on the next episode. I will see you on the next one. Well, real quick, actually, before we wrap up, let's just kind of summarize what this episode is one, kind of the workflow of how GitHub works. I know it's kind of hard to keep track of because we actually weren't able to see all these things connected, but we will get in the flow of it. We will show that. We just need to, step one, kind of pre-configure all of this real quick is all I kind of forgot us to do. But this is going to be the workflow is we generate code, we add it to the staging area, we commit it with a message, and then we push it to the version control. Let me remove this. And the reason why we do that is because anyone who connects to this GitHub version of our code, we can pull it, we can keep track of it, we can utilize it. If our machine breaks for whatever reason, we can pull it on our new laptop, can pull down the very code that we just built, and we're up to date. We're good to go. Or if a teammate's laptop needs that code, we can go ahead and allow for them to have it. So that's the biggest thing is make sure to download Git on your machine, brew install Git, and install Homebrew if you don't already have that. And then just understand the GitHub workflow. And then let's set up permissions on the next episode. I will see you there.